You ever feel like no matter how disciplined you try to be, like eating healthy, cutting out all the bad foods you're quote not supposed to eat, and you're absolutely just crushing every workout, but then you still slip off course when life gets busy? Do your health decisions maybe feel like really heavy shoulds instead of actually having joyful wants? Kind of like you're dragging yourself towards progress instead of flowing with purpose? Today, I want to show you a very powerful shift to stop operating from what we call the room of pressure and finally start living from the rooms of what we call identity and power. See, it's a shift that changes absolutely everything so that you can finally lose fat, build strength, and have a lasting transformation for good this time that actually aligns with your faith and no longer fights it. Hey, if you're returning, thanks for coming back. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Lance, and since 2005, I have helped hundreds upon hundreds of high-performing entrepreneurs, creators, and leaders get rid of excess body fat, get stronger than ever, and gain more confidence than they ever thought possible, but without extremes, without obsession, or giving up their life to do it. Okay. If you're a faith driven high achiever who's confident at work, but you feel just maybe stuck or held back by your health and fitness, and you want a permanent transformation built on rock instead of another temporary makeover built on sand, you're in the right place. We're going to go through that today. So the very first thing is you've likely blamed willpower, tried harder, and maybe you still find yourself binging, skipping workouts, or reverting to old habits whenever stress or doubt creeps in. And if so, I get it. I've been there, and many of my clients have been there as well. But the real issue isn't discipline. It's actually the room that you're operating from. One room is going to drain you, the other is going to build you up and sustain you. Now, I realize this sounds a little bit maybe abstract, but I'm going to break this down in a way that is practical so that you can finally live in this place of, let's call it abundance, where you're no longer striving and you're no longer forcing yourself to, quote, do the right things. You're finding yourself doing them automatically because you've operated from this room of identity and power instead of this other room of pressure. And this room of pressure is where you're essentially forcing yourself to do all of these externally pressuring tactics. I want to show you how to do it from a place of automation, okay? So if you're operating out of low confidence, low energy, constantly comparing yourself to others, not recognizing your value according to the Lord's word, do you think that you're going to be as effective for his kingdom, for your family, for your business, in your marriage? I would doubt it. I've struggled in my own journey as well whenever I've done it the way that doesn't align with God's word. My clients have done the same thing, and you might be doing the same thing as well. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and dive in, and we're going to go over how to have a lasting transformation without the constant striving, without the guilt, and without the self-sabotage. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and dive on in. The very first thing is we want to talk about the room of pressure. This is where guilt, performance, and fear resides instead of what we're wanting to do. And when we operate from pressure, we typically get what we call a temporary makeover instead of a permanent transformation, okay? The room of pressure is driven by fear of failure. It's guilt for not doing enough or trying to prove something to yourself or to others. It demands perfection and constant striving, and it drains your nervous system, okay? It's going to keep you in that fight or flight or that system one response where we're in sympathetic instead of parasympathetic nervous system, okay? So chronic stress is really going to be shutting down self-regulation and a lot of our hormone functions, and it really just keeps us striving. It's going to be built on pressure of avoidance of certain foods, trying to be good and to do good. And when you operate from pressure, your brain does trigger cortisol and it shifts to that fight or flight mode, okay? Now, this is going to increase cravings, impulsive decisions, and energy crashes, which is going to make it it's going to make consistency pretty much impossible for most people who are already busy, okay? So it's kind of like driving with the gas and the brakes slammed on at the exact same time. Now, a lot of people will say, like, there's no such thing as survival mode, there's no such thing as sympathetic response in your body, but that's absolutely not true. Now, from the position on a science level where people say there's no such thing as survival mode, meaning that if you've heard that survival mode prevents you from losing body fat, yes, that's true. That there is no such thing as that version of survival mode. But if we're calling survival mode sympathetic nervous system mode, where you're producing or secreting way too much cortisol, you're never getting yourself into that rest and restoration sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system response. You are going to be out of whack, so to speak. You are not going to have your hormones functioning regularly or as often as what they should in the way that produces continuous fat loss and which allows you to sleep well and to, to again, have your hormones functioning the right way. So the point with this is that if you're doing this the right way, you need to know that the Lord talks about in the Word, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." In Matthew 11, you are never called to hustle your way into health. Okay, you got to know that pressure is going to lead to burnout, and if you notice anything in the Word, Jesus leads through rest, through peace, through power, not through constant striving. And maybe this has been you, where in the past, maybe you or somebody that you've known has, quote, tried to do the right things out of discipline, striving, out of willpower, but until there is that internal transformation, you're just not going to have the sort of results you want to, and you end up getting in and out of alignment nonstop, okay? So the enemy wants you in this pressure room, that we're calling the pressure room, because it keeps you stuck in striving mode. So the question is are your habits being driven by guilt, fear, or shame, or by alignment, purpose, and through grace, okay? So the room of identity and power is very different from the room of pressure and performance, okay? Whereas instead of it being based on avoidance of certain foods, trying to be good and do good, and all of this where you're constantly trying to strive, instead, it's going to be quite a bit different in the room of identity and power, where identity, stewardship, and purpose actually live. It's totally different. Now, the room of power is going to be built on who you are becoming, not what you're avoiding, okay? So kind of like the same thing with your walk with God, it's not about avoidance of cussing, avoidance of drinking, avoidance of smoking, avoidance of sexual immorality. Yes, those things happen, but if you only start from a place of avoidance, that is the room of pressure, okay? That is essentially the room of religion, if you will, okay? Man's man-made idea of trying to do good enough to get into heaven, as opposed to having that transformation and knowing that you're renewed by the transformation of your mind. That's essentially what we're talking about here. So the room of identity and power, where identity, stewardship, and purpose live, is a room that, again, is built on who you are becoming, not what you're avoiding. It's where grace, clarity, and energy live, okay? And I don't mean this to sound new age. What I mean is that when you focus on the outside only, like, I'm going to avoid these foods, I'm going to make myself work out, I'm going to do all these things, you're going to get some results, but you're not going to get a true transformation. Whereas when you focus on having an internal transformation, which that starts with the room of identity and power instead of the room of pressure and high performance and avoidance, okay? And so with this said, identity leads behavior, not the other way around. So psychology shows us that when actions align with your identity, motivation becomes intrinsic or self-determined. It doesn't take the same effort because it's guided based on who you see yourself becoming and what the word says to be true about you, okay? So actions flow from who you believe you are, your values, and your calling, all right? An example would be like, I'm a healthy man or I'm a healthy woman who honors God with my body, and I steward well over every blessing that he's provided. And that's going to create different actions than, well, I've got to lose weight because otherwise I'm going to be miserable, or I've got to lose weight because I'm already miserable. Now, again, it's okay to use where you're at if you've got some sort of pains that you're going through, such as, I hate the way I look, I don't like how I feel, I'm not living according to God's best for me. That's okay. as long as we decide that we're not going to force ourselves into that identity or the pressure of I've got to do all these things perfect, because you're going to find yourself not always being in alignment with that, and that's okay. But if you do start with, I need to determine what kind of person I want to become, when you become that kind of person, or you begin to work towards becoming that person, you're going to notice that the habits that align with that identity stay much easier. Okay, this is also known as your thermostat. If you've got a thermostat basically that says, oh, I'm always the kind of person who falls off the wagon, I've never been fit, etc. You've got this identity that says that no matter what you do, you're going to struggle. But if you work on identity first, you're going to end up finding that your habits align with that identity much easier, much better. And you're no longer striving, okay? So you want to, just like what the word says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So this starts with a mindset rather than forcing yourself to eat better. What most people are doing is they treat getting into shape as it's some sort of temporary makeover thing, like, well, I got to drop a bunch of weight, so I'm going to avoid these foods, and I'm going to do this until I get back to normal, and then I'm going to go doing whatever I did before. Well, the problem is, whatever you were doing before has led to this, let's say, this temperature of I'm not in shape and I have to do the right things, and so on and so forth. Hopefully this is making sense what I'm trying to mean here. But if we're transformed by the renewing of our mind, this no longer becomes about willpower. Instead, it's about alignment. So power comes when your health habits reflect your values instead of your shame, or instead of pressure from the outside to do better, okay? So again, when you truly have that transformation in the Lord, you're no longer trying to not cuss. You're no longer trying to not get drunk. Because of the transformation that happens within the inside, you naturally tend to gravitate, or supernaturally, towards the things that the word says are good for us. And that's my point here with this video is, instead of doing it the way that the world does, which is built on sand instead of on rock, where you're avoiding everything and trying to gravitate towards only the healthiest of foods and only the best of the best of the best, this is a place of pressure. And if you instead focus on that identity, where it's the room of identity and power, where you determine, okay, what do I want to become? Who does the word say that I'm supposed to be? And then if you see your body instead of like, well, it's the temple and I've got to take care of it. Yes, that's true. But what if instead of forcing yourself to do these things, you simply ask yourself, if as a Christian, are you stewarding over the body, the health, and your life the way that you believe would honor the Lord? That's a place of identity, or a room of identity and power. And when this happens, again, you're going to find that you are naturally gravitating towards stewarding better and better over your health and over your body. Whereas the other way, avoidance and chasing perfect habits, ends up leading to feeling like you're failing. And then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you're already telling yourself, well, I'm the kind of person who struggles with getting in shape, or I don't have any discipline, or I need willpower, blah, 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 you're going to find yourself constantly struggling the same way as those who struggle to, let's say, to keep their walk with the Lord from backsliding. This backsliding tends to come from a position of striving and trying to do the right things, rather than allowing yourself to be changed and renewed from the inside out. Most people see fitness as something that is external, whereas in the joyfully fit method that we teach is an internal structure that therefore leads to better external habits. But if you start with external and you're hoping that it's going to lead to internal changes, you're going to be working quite a bit harder. And typically you're going to find yourself not necessarily getting into alignment as often as what you need to, okay? So the power identity room isn't about pressure. It really, it's not about forcing yourself to do things out of discipline. It's about realigning your habits, your mindset, and your actions with one thing. Who am I called to be? And am I moving closer or further from that calling each and every day? Now, the reason that this works so much better is because habits become expression of your chosen identity instead of battles of willpower because you're trying to, quote, do the right things. Consistency is going to build naturally as you're casting more votes towards that person you're gradually becoming. Think about it whenever you first got saved, if I can use that phrasing, you might have tried to not watch movies or to not listen to certain music when you started, but ultimately, what you end up finding works the best is as the Lord allows you to continue that transformation on your journey, those choices that you used to make they start to fall to the wayside, where you find yourself no longer needing to tell yourself, I've got to not watch this anymore. I've got to stop listening to this. You stop wanting to hear those things. You stop wanting to see them because you're pursuing the identity of the Lord and you're matching that identity of who the Bible says you are. Okay. Hopefully this is making sense and doesn't seem too abstract, but this is so, so important because when you get it, that fitness is the same as your walk with the Lord. It starts with the internals. And when you're pursuing the Lord and you're pursuing the growth in that identity to become more and more like the Lord, you stop needing the willpower to choose better foods or to say no to foods that don't serve you, especially when you have a system in place that allows you to actually enjoy good foods and also enjoy healthy foods. So there's a balance and there's no longer this striving to avoid everything that you deem to be bad for you. Okay. So consistency builds naturally as you vote for the person you're becoming. So one thing that you can do today is to speak aloud one I am statement, like, for example, I'm a steward of strength who honors God with my body. I'm a steward of health and fitness who honors the Lord with my health, my fitness, and my body. Okay. Lasting fat loss and strength are not built on forcing. Okay. You build them by living as the person you're called to be. So when you shift the room from pressure and external only into identity and internal, then that's whenever willpower and discipline become optional and really not even needed, okay? So the last part of this is you want to choose your room daily because it's not like you choose it once and you're done. You're casting a vote every day to go and walk in. The same way as whenever you first got saved, you can go and walk down that road to get to the old bars you used to get to, or you can walk down a whole different path knowing that this path that you're on now is going to lead to a different place, and you don't need to walk down that road to the bar to see if you've got willpower. You simply choose to go down a different path altogether. Hopefully this makes sense. So you're not stuck in either room. Every moment is a choice for you. So your language, your routine, and your triggers are going to help you either step into power and identity according to the word, or you're going to default to those old habits of pressure, okay? So just like what James Clear teaches in the book, I believe it's Atomic Habits, every small action is a vote for the type of person that you're becoming. So you want to start your day with identity cues, such as I'm a person of consistency. I train because I'm called to. I work out because I am stewarding over my body that the Lord's given me. And 80% of the time, like what I teach on this program here, I choose foods that are healthy and nourishing, but 20% of the time, 20% of my calories, I allow myself to enjoy those fun foods that in the past would have derailed me or taken me out of what I need to be doing, okay? So stewardship is a daily decision. So you want to, again, just like it says in the word, you were bought with a price. So you want to honor God with that one body that you get, and you don't want to wait until it's breaking down on you to do it. So you don't need motivation when you have meaning and when you've chosen the identity, because every day you're practicing in grace the same way that the word teaches us. And each day you're going to get closer and closer and closer to being more in alignment with that identity, okay? So Meaning is what keeps you in the room of power and identity, whereas chasing external habits and perfection keeps you in that room of pressure and striving. Okay. So, in the morning, what you can do to reset is ask, what room am I operating from today? Or what room am I choosing to operate from today? And then the other thing that would really help is to do identity journaling, which means that you can choose 3 affirmations rooted in who you are becoming, not what you fear. So basically, what people typically do is, okay, I'm going to stay away from cake and sweets today. And then basically, if you're doing that, which is an external only premise, if you chose cake that day or chose something outside of what you're trying to avoid, then it leads to guilt. But if you instead have an affirmation of today, I'm going to operate from this room where I steward well over my body that the Lord has given me. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to ask if when you choose this food, is this as good of stewardship of what I'm wanting to? And in the beginning, you might say, well, today I'm going to steward better over my health and body compared to what I did yesterday. And that's a gradual stewardship where you're getting better and better. That is a much, much healthier place to be operating from over the place of pressure, okay, and struggling externally, all right? So you want to operate from who you're becoming, not what you're trying to avoid. So again, this is going to help you tremendously. Every action that you take, like tracking your food, doing your workout, saying no to self-sabotage, is going to either be from a place of I'm avoiding these things because they're bad for me, or I'm choosing better stewardship because this is the identity that I know the Lord is calling me to. One is going to drain, one is going to build. One feels like bondage, the other feels like stewardship. You don't need more pressure, you need more alignment, and that can only happen when you are focused each day on what the word says about you, and if you are casting votes towards the stewardship of that identity. So what I want you to do is to step into the room of power and identity and alignment. Choose actions that reflect your calling, not your fears, not the trying to avoid things. This is abundance over scarcity, okay? So ask yourself, am I acting out of pressure and avoidance and trying to choose perfection? Or am I operating from purpose and stewardship and alignment of what the word says is true about me? And remember, you don't need to do this perfectly. You're going to make continuous progress, where what I would prefer you to do is to compare what you did today versus yesterday, the day before. Have I stewarded better today compared to yesterday or last week, rather than, oh, great, I blew it. I chose cake when I was trying to avoid it, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. I know I got a little bit abstract here, but I really hope that this makes sense and that you can see that when you choose to operate from the internal and identity, it is going to lead to better behaviors, to better habits, and therefore better outcomes in your fitness journey. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you find value in this. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss anything coming out in the future. And don't be afraid to drop any comments in the comments below to let me know if you have any questions or what you want me to cover in the future. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all on